Hey everyone, Sam here, and we have another client interview for you today, this time with Bradley. I'm super excited to have you guys hear from Bradley today because Bradley's an absolute rock star. He completely killed it during recruiting despite being a bioengineering major and not really starting his preparation in earnest until I guess the second half of sophomore year. It's kind of when we met. But anyway, I think he got selected for interviews with, I'll let him speak to this himself. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he got selected for interviews with almost every single bank that he applied for. He ended up getting pretty much like almost every single super day, if I'm not mistaken, and like every single offer that he went to super day for. So definitely want to get him on here to share with you guys how he was able to have so much success. And so, Bradley, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And congratulations on all the success.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. So, before we start, can you just kind of tell everyone a bit about yourself and your background when we first started working together? I believe it was December of your sophomore year. But can you tell us kind of, what school do you go to? What do you major in? What kind of experiences did you have on your resume at the time? And just like what kind of candidate were you on paper in general?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I've noticed a big change. I remember back in it was probably October or November of this year. I was interviewing for sophomore summer positions at places like City, at places like UBS. And at that time, I pretty much had all science experience. Again, I'm a bioengineering major, go to a target school. But at the same time, it was pretty much all science, a little bit of entrepreneurship, but nothing really that deeply related to business or that deeply related to finance. And, on top of that, just thinking, holistically how good of a candidate I was, I realized in retrospect that my behavioral answers were atrocious. Like what I said to my city interviewer is almost comical for like like why do you want to work at city, or like what is city? Like my understanding was just so poor. And then on top of that, I remember I had my friend, because I knew absolutely nothing about finance. I had my friend in investment clubs sit me down and explain like basic finance concepts to me. Like he pulls up some DCF Excel model and I'm like trying to learn it through the night, and it was just like a complete disaster. I could tell that my interviewer was not exactly vibing with me. So yeah, it's just kind of how I was at that point. Was maybe for lack of a better word, I think maybe a decent like candidate, but in other respects, it's almost like god awful. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so really like you went to a target school or you go to a target school, an Ivy League school, right?
Right,
You're a bioengineering major. You originally want to become like a PhD scientist or something like that, right? And
right,
everything you had done up to that point had mostly been geared towards scientific research and not towards finance, right?
exactly.
And then I think when you first came to me, you had already decided to switch over to finance, and I think at the time you had applied to what the UBS sophomore summer internship, but you didn't hear back from them, right?
Right.
And then you applied for the city sophomore leadership program, and I think you actually got the interview for that, but like you said, you just you didn't end up getting it because your interview skills weren't there, right?
Exactly.
Um, and then what else? I think you had done. I think I asked you about kind of your networking efforts at the time, and I think you had described it as that you had done quite a bit of networking, right? Uh,
Right.
do you remember? Can you talk a little bit about kind of like what you had done up to that point?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I remember we thought it was around 20. I double checked. I'd probably only called like 10 to 15 people,
Hmm.
and they weren't the most fruitful calls. I had no idea like how to network. I just thought it was like a casual chat that really had like no structure. And after doing the program, I definitely know like a lot more about networking, and I've certainly been able to network with a lot more than just 10 to 15 people, which really isn't going to get you anywhere in the long scheme of things.
Right. No, yeah, back then I think you told me 20 to 30, but I guess it's actually 10 to 15.
Yeah, when I thought it was 20 to 30 at that time, but I actually looked back and I think it was like 15 or something.
Yeah, no, that's pretty normal. I talk to a lot of students a lot, and like pretty much every week I'm talking to new students, and a lot of times they'll say they'll be in that 20 to 30 range, and they'll be pretty proud of how much effort they've already put into networking. So yeah, I've talked to a lot of people already, and I'm always kind of chuckling like, "Oh, you have no idea," you know.
Right.
But okay, so that was kind of like where you were when we first started. Let's give everyone a little bit of a spoiler first, but can you tell everyone kind of all the banks you've received offers from at this point? And so you're currently in the summer between your sophomore and junior year, right? Just so everybody
Exactly.
recording this. So you're in the summer between your sophomore and junior year, but it's what, July right now? Okay, so what offers have you received so far?
Yeah, so a lot of processes haven't even kicked off yet, but yeah, I've been super lucky. I've gotten Perella Weinberg, I've gotten Citi, I've gotten Evercore, and now I'm doing two Goldman Sachs interviews, so both San Francisco and New York. And I've attended sort of insight programs for both of those. So, I feel pretty confident that I could hopefully get that along with like interview prep and all that. So, yeah, I've been very, very fortunate.
Yeah, and the Goldman Sachs interviews that are coming up, just to be clear about that, those are super days, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I even went straight to Super Day for San Francisco.
Yeah. As in, like, they didn't even ask you to do the higher views because you went to the inside day and they liked you so much from the inside day already that they fast tracked the super day.
Yes, and I even got a call from a Goldman banker saying that that was going to happen, and they really liked me as a candidate.
Right, right. You're talking about the associate that called you after inside day and talked to you for what, like an hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, it was for an hour, and yeah, I mean, she really expressed like she thought I was a really good candidate, and that I was a good fit here, and we kind of just chit chatted about a bunch of things and hit it off. But it also kind of came with the program, like knowing how to network, knowing how to you know be able to converse with sort of professionals while also kind of being a likable personality.
Right, right. Well, that's amazing, man. I mean, you've already gotten 3 offers. We're in July. Probably a fourth offer on the way with Goldman if, everything goes as we expect. And those are basically all the super, like every single super day you've gone to so far, you've gotten an offer from, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, for every investment bank that I've interviewed with, yeah, I've gotten the super day and then the offer.
Yep. And every single application, is that like every single application you've submitted so far you've gotten a super day for, assuming they've had a super day? Obviously, like some of the processes they haven't gotten that far yet, but all the ones that have had super days so far, you've pretty much gotten one, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so in other words, your batting average right now is basically 1,000. Like you have a perfect track record, just so we're clear.
Right, that is true. Yeah, I haven't thought of it that way, but
Okay.
yeah, that's a pretty cool way to think about it.
I just want to pause there and call that out because that is freaking phenomenal, right? Like that is, just for everyone that's listening, that is not normal. Um, Most people who recruit for banking do not get every single interview and every single offer. Um, I mean, God knows it's hard enough to just get even one offer, right? Like I always tell people, all you need is one offer. So obviously, if you can get multiple offers, then you get to choose from the best offer, right? And I mean, having choices like Perella and City and Evercore. I mean, Evercore, that's pretty much as good as it gets, in terms of elite boutiques. And then now Goldman Sachs. I mean, I think you're gonna have a really tough decision on your hands, but it's a great problem to have.
Definitely. Yeah, it's actually a little stressful to decide between these banks, but yeah, I'd definitely rather have it that way than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, look, man, you can't go wrong no matter which way you go. But so let's talk about kind of let's go back to the beginning, right? Like let's show people kind of how you got these amazing results or how you got to where you are today. So it's only been about 7 months since kind of we met and started working together. So um, first things first, I guess, why did you decide to switch from, PhD scientist track to investment banking? Like those things seem so different. What was it that attracted you to banking in the first place?
Yeah, it's interesting because my freshman summer I worked in kind of like an academic research lab.
Hmm.
And when I had actually kind of gotten a taste of what the real thing is and what actually working at like like a professional research lab looked like, I've realized that it wasn't quite all that I had kind of, you know, made it out to be.
Uh,
I kind of had this grandiose vision of like, being able to make this like huge impact on the world, and you kind of have independence over all your work, and you're kind of just exploring what you want to do. But in reality, life was, professors just writing grants all day, not actually really in on the action. You
right.
know, um, Mostly just being in a quiet lab, like doing physical motion the whole time. If you're not the professor, like it was almost like manual labor, right? Like you
Hmm.
aren't actually putting input into the project. You're just kind of like doing experiments all day. And I
Hmm.
realized that just coupled with the job market, which is like absolutely horrible for professors,
Hmm.
um, coupled with just the salary, to be honest, which is also like really low for kind of the level of the work they're doing. I
Yeah.
knew that I needed to make a shift. And so, just thinking kind of through all my options, I thought, law school, med school again, because I'm a biology major was a big consideration. But, ultimately I wound up at investment banking. And I think it's for a lot of reasons. Like, I mean, first of all, it's no surprise that like, banking can lead to a lot of things. And I think being able to have a lot of exit opportunities,
Hmm.
let that be to actually, stay on as an associate or go to private equity or go to like venture capital or growth equity or, corporate strategy, and the list goes on and on.
Right.
That was sort of a flexibility that I really needed because I was shifting my interests at that point and I really had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
And then I think second of all, just like the salary, right? I mean,
Right.
it's pretty crazy to me because I didn't grow up in the richest family. So what I could make at the summer internship at Evercore is close to what my family made in 1 year. And you know and that's just like the starting salary. That's like the summer analyst, which is kind of like the bottom of the bottom, right?
Right.
And then if you're like an associate or a VP, you're making much more. So I think that ability to just plainly be able to make money is important. And then I think finally, like, again, I was comparing research and I was thinking, what impact is this work having? Like, a lot of basic research doesn't actually lead to discoveries. Like, maybe a sliver of it actually informs something in the market, but, most of it's just kind of lost in history, like lost it in some journal. Whereas, like in banking, like you're actually doing like multi-million, maybe even like billion-dollar transactions that could
Hmm.
transform like a business, if not an industry. So, I mean,
Hmm.
that just seemed like way more impact to me than kind of churning away at something that probably won't even make it.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Yep. No, that makes sense. Okay. So basically, I mean, it's a lot of different things, but it's all things you talked about. It's the exit opportunities, the flexibility, the compensation, the impact. It's kind of like the best of all worlds combined into one job, essentially.
yeah, I definitely think so. I don't think a lot of people at colleges really even know what investment banking is on a deeper level. you
Hmm.
know they just think like, oh, you're just like bored all day, like you know doing some finance thing, but in reality, it's an incredibly important career. Like you have a lot on your shoulders. You're working with like huge clients, and you're making a lot of money again.
Yeah.
um, So yeah, I think it was kind of the best of both worlds.
And doing it at an extremely young age, right? I mean,
Right.
who knows what most 21-year-olds are doing when they graduate, but what I do know is the average college grad in the United States in 2018 is making around $50,000, right? And so you think about that versus what you're going to be doing in banking. There's a reason why they're paying you, 2.5 to 3 times what your friends are making, is because they're giving you a lot more responsibilities, right? And they want to hire the things that they're assigning to you in terms of your responsibilities. Like they need the best of the best, like they need like the smartest people to be working on that. When it comes to Fortune 100, Fortune 500 CEOs and CFOs, they can't just put some average 21-year-old in front of them and have those people advising them on some of the biggest transactions that they're going to work on in their careers, right? So, uh,
Definitely.
so yeah, that's it's an amazing opportunity. Um, so let's talk about kind of um, when you first came to me. Obviously, like I'm not the first thing that you tried in terms of you know, helping you get into banking, right? So like, what other resources had you been using prior to coming to Wall Street Mastermind?
Yeah, and that's almost the thing, is kind of the lack of resources that I was using, or at least the lack of like good resources.
Mhm,
Because behaviorals, I thought, oh, like behaviorals, you can just think of them off the top of your head. Like
mhm,
there's really, it's just talking about yourself. Like how hard could it be?
mhm,
And then for technicals, I honestly, at that point, I think I was having like my friend walk me through some basic concepts. Maybe looked at like a couple of guides on the internet, nothing serious. And then networking, I just thought it was like something that you naturally did. It wasn't like something that you have a structure. So,
mhm,
really, I guess on that front, I guess I had resources, but obviously nowhere like near what this program's been. And
mhm,
then for like resume, my resume was actually pretty decent. Because of like the Dartmouth Center for Professional Development, but they kind of nevertheless like miss some key things that I think should be on a finance resume.
mhm,
Even though like the formatting and the verbiage was good.
mhm, mhm. Got it. So if we break that down one by one, for your resume and application material type of stuff, you went to the school career center, right, and just kind of used their resume services, right? Uh,
Right.
for your technical interviews, what were the interview guides that you were using? Was it the Wall Street Oasis one or the Breaking the Wall Street, or what would you use?
Yeah, I think maybe I was using Wall Street Oasis at that point, but again, I just had so little knowledge that at that point, I barely knew what like an income statement was. So, I
Right.
think Wall Street Oasis, but not
Okay.
even really using that.
Yeah. Okay. So you were using some guides and just having your friends or upperclassmen or whatever in your extracurricular organizations kind of teach you things, right? Uh,
Right.
and then on the behaviorals, you're just like most college students I talk to. Basically, your mentality was, it's just talking about yourself. It's pretty easy. I don't even need prep for that, right?
Hmm.
And then networking, kind of the same thing. It's just like, I'm doing it. You just kind of go through the motions. Like not much to prep there either, right? That was kind of where you were at, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. So I guess where do you feel like these things kind of fell short for you, or like why did you even decide to reach out to me in the first place?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, like, at first going into sort of sophomore fall, I just had no idea how investment banking recruiting worked. And
Mhm.
I thought that that sort of preparation was sufficient. Um, but, when I started getting my actual results and I noticed, you know, Citi interview went terribly. When UBS didn't even respond. And, just generally when I started like not being able to really get, looks, or
Mhm.
those looks were just, bad looks, like I just failed the interview, or,
Yeah.
didn't network at all, or, just kind of burning like applications.
Yeah.
I realized it was time to make a change. And, because I had had a lot of success in science research before this. Um, And considering this is kind of like a brand new chapter, I just didn't want to like transition from something I knew that I was good at and then just totally fail at it, because then there'd be really no reason to switch over in the first place.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. And I would say that's very interesting that you mentioned that. I think subconsciously too, maybe even without knowing this, but given your scientific background, your mentality is, hey, if I tried something like and it doesn't work, then it's time to try a different approach or a different hypothesis or test a different variable. Because if you just keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results, right? And so you didn't wait very long. You kind of like didn't see the results that you want to see with UBS and with Citi, and that was enough for you to kind of take action and try to figure out, okay, what else could I be doing differently?
Exactly.
Got it. No, that's huge, man, because a lot of students, I feel like they kind of they go about things the best way that they know how, and then it doesn't work most of the time because usually there's something that they're missing, or sometimes there's multiple things that they're missing. But then people don't, for some reason, I don't know. I think we're like taught to be self-sufficient, or it's weak to reach out for help or whatever, and then they just kind of keep doing what they're doing, and it's kind of like banging your head against the wall. And I always tell people, it's the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same things over and over again and expect different results, right? So if you're not seeing the results that you want, then it's important to get the help that you need and figure out like what else could you be doing better, right? And a lot of the times that type of improvement you can't really identify yourself because it's a blind spot for you, right? Like if you could
Definitely.
identify yourself, then you would have already done the better thing in the first place, right?
Hmm.
So that's awesome, that you knew to do that. Let's so then okay, you then reached out to me. Let's continue, right? And down this journey of yours. So then you reached out to me, then we talked. We I think you booked a strategy session. I remember I think we talked for like 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken. I think you might still
Yeah, we did.
I think you're still the longest strategy session that I've ever done to date, if I'm not mistaken. But do you remember why it was so long?
Yeah, so, say first 30, 40 minutes or whatever. It's just us chatting, you explaining the program. And then, it kind of came to a point, um, and I was just really unsure,
Mm,
like about the program. Like, I really didn't know if like you were the person to do it. Like, I guess first of all, like what qualifies you to say that like, you know, how to like properly recruit in investment banking? Because at that point, my friends, even ones with like decent offers, were telling me it was like a completely random process, and they
mm,
had been rejected from 30 banks, and then finally that one, and it's just because it's a completely random thing that you can't prepare for. So
mhm,
I had this mentality that, oh, is there really a way that you can break this down? Kind of a formula, if you will,
mm,
that you can use for this. So I was skeptical about that. And then second of all, you know, I was just skeptical that you were like the person to do it, right? Not just that you
mhm,
could break it down, but like that you were like, had the credentials to do it.
mhm.
Um, and so that's why it took me like 2 or 3 hours to decide. But I think, you know, in the end, again, like that desire to change,
Mhm.
like that desire to to be able to win at this was so much greater, because there was so much more at stakes than
Yeah,
just a little program fee, whatever.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times, people are all for, hey, getting someone who's been a banker and has been on the on-campus recruiting team at Morgan Stanley and whatever. Like in terms of credentials, like if someone like that offers to help them with recruiting, they're like, yeah, of course I want that. It's all great, but then obviously, like I run this as a business, and when it comes time to when this kind of like push comes to shove and it's time to like invest in themselves, then that's where they kind of start, like fear kicks in, and they're like, well, what if I invest in this program and it doesn't work? Or what if I don't get the outcome that I'm looking for? What if this is a waste of money? And then you start thinking all these things that are kind of like telling you not to do it, and you have to like really bet on yourself and take that leap of faith if you want to kind of come over to the other side and get all of that knowledge, right? And so that's kind of like a pivotal moment of a lot of people don't do it, right? A lot of people just like they can't get themselves to do it um because investing in yourself sometimes is scary, right? And I don't know the psychology behind it, but sometimes it's almost like, oh, what if I invest in myself and I still fail? Then basically I'm a fool for making this investment, right? I think
Right.
subconsciously there's a little bit of that too. It's just like people don't like being fools, right? Um, but you ultimately, even though it took a very very long time, kind of crossed that bridge of fear, I guess, so to speak, and ended up betting on yourself anyway, right?
Definitely.
Got it. So I mean, like, I'm really glad you did, obviously,
Me
because
too.
like
Yeah.
you've got I gotta be honest. Like I would say, the results that you've gotten have even exceeded my expectations. Like I knew, like back then when we were talking, I told you I was like, hey, I'm very confident that based on our conversation, based on what you're telling me that you're struggling with and what it is that you need help with, I'm very confident that those are all things I can help you with, and I'm very confident I can get you a job in investment banking. But I certainly wasn't gonna tell you like, oh, I guarantee you're gonna get every single super day you apply for, every single offer you interview for. Just like that's so rare, right? So you absolutely crushed it, and that's a lot of the credit goes to you. Um, what do you feel like now that you've been through my program? Like, what was it that you found to be the most helpful, I guess, out of everything we did together? Or maybe it's multiple things, I don't know, but like what changed things for you? Like from, in terms of what you were doing before to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this a week ago. Like, it was after one of those super days, and I was just like, I think I was sitting in the Dallas airport or something, because I was going back home briefly, and I was just like, wow, like this program actually like changed everything. And I was just thinking, I guess what parts. I think first of all, the behaviorals. Like your help with the behaviorals is massive because people don't understand about behaviorals. Again, everybody thinks that oh, it's talking about myself. I can just kind of spitball something or write a script the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, if you think about it, if like your technical finance knowledge is sort of like graded on a percentile basis,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Then why isn't behaviorals?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why aren't behaviorals just as stringently graded? And why does not like every single word, like every single way that you phrase things matter? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the biggest thing. I mean, also the technical knowledge. Again, I was maybe not confused where to look for something, but there's a difference between just memorizing lists of information and actually understanding it. And
Mm-hmm.
especially once you get to like really good, firms like, a Lazard or, a Moelis or an Evercore, they aren't just going to ask you the most basic straight out of the book questions. They're going to twist it.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think those questions twisted it more than they didn't. Like if I didn't kind of have the ability to understand it conceptually, there's absolutely no way I would have done well because the very first question is maybe something straight out of the book, and then they start taking little turns on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, like I think maybe the third most helpful was and they were all very helpful to be honest, was networking.
Mm-hmm.
um, because again, people don't even understand like, networking. People think, oh, if I contact like 20 to 30 people, that's good. And no, with your, program, you're able to learn a lot more of a systematic, a lot more of a logical way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was just super helpful. So
Yeah.
honestly, all of it was helpful. I guess if I had to pick one, the behaviorals, but yeah, I mean, really everything was good.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we kind of drill down into what you said just now, one by one, on the behavioral side, I mean, I like the thing you said about being great on a percentile basis. I feel like that's even more so the case for behaviorals than for technicals, right? Because for technicals, you either have the right answer or you don't, right? So it's
Right.
almost kind of binary, right? But on the behaviorals, because it's so subjective and open ended, your answers aren't being graded on a standalone basis. They're being graded on a relative basis relative to what everyone else is doing, right? And so most of the time where I see people struggle is that, they just write down the best answer that they could come up with, and then they memorize it, and then they go into these interviews and they hope that they get asked the questions that they actually prepared for, and then when they do, they give the answer that they memorized. But that's all great and all, but they're just doing that on a standalone basis, right? Like they are not understanding what is everyone else doing, what's their competition doing, are their answers actually better than other people's answers, right? Like they don't know that, because most college students, like, you don't know what other people are doing for their answers. It's not like you've interviewed a bunch of candidates before, right? So how are you supposed to know, right? And then even if you so that's a big part of like what I help you calibrate, right? Which is, are your answers actually better? And when they're not better, then the second step is kind of what you talked about, like, the rewording things, rephrasing things, restructuring your answers, cutting things down when you're going too much into the weeds, or expanding on certain things when there's not enough detail. But again, this is one of those things where you can't be the one doing this yourself, because your first draft is usually already your best draft, right? Like it's not fair for someone to ask you to go figure out how to take your behavioral answer from a 5 to a 10, or from a 7 to a 10, because if you knew how to make it a 10, you would have already done it,
Right.
right? So I think that's a lot of the work that we do on the behavioral side. On the technical side, it's like you said, like, just again, what most people are doing is, I guess, reading the Wall Street Oasis Guide, or the Breaking the Wall Street Guide, or Vault Guide, or there's a bunch of guides out there that you can read. I read Rosenbaum textbook, um, and then they just try to memorize all the formulas and memorize all the questions, like the 400 questions or whatever. Uh, and that's a very poor way to do it, because, like you said, when you get to these interviews, how many times do you think the interviewers actually asked you like the exact same questions as the ones you read in those guides? Probably
You
like,
know, quarter of the time. But again, it depends on the firm because, some are going to take a twist right after that.
right.
And
Like they're gonna change the numbers. They're gonna change the way they ask the same question, or they can test for the same concept with like a slightly different angle, right? Or they a lot of times they're gonna try to dress up the question a bit, or disguise it a bit, so that you don't it's not so obvious like what they're testing you on. And unless you truly have internalized that knowledge, and it's like, you're now at the application level, like application knowledge, where you can apply these concepts in different life situations, there's almost no way you're going to be able to get through an entire technical interview without tripping up, right? um,
right.
and so memorization, that worked maybe like 10 years ago, when the competition wasn't so fierce, like back when I was in college, when we were like, that was good enough. Like nowadays, like there's so many resources out there already. Everybody has access to the same interview guides. um, Everybody's pretty much memorized the same things. That's not enough for the interviewers to be able to distinguish the good candidates from the bad candidates anymore. So essentially the bar has been raised, right? And so, especially like you said, with these elite boutiques like Evercore and Perella and Moelis, and you know the elite boutiques that are arguably even harder to get into than the bulge brackets, they get really, really technical with their technical interviews, right? So I think it's pretty crazy that you got your technical knowledge from. I mean, I would say, what, when you started, it was probably at what, on a scale of 10, probably at a 1 or a 2. Would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I barely, yeah, probably one or two.
Yeah. To now, you're at like a 9 or a 10. I would say you're probably at a 10, right? So, like, what was that interview you had? Where was it, the Evercore interview where they were drilling you on technicals, and then what happened? Like, what did the interviewer say to you?
Oh, he said, so he basically asked something that was Some of them were just like incredibly obscure, granular details of finance that were kind of like, take the information, take a leap to try to understand what this is.
Yeah.
And then some were kind of just like almost like brain teasers that involved finance.
Mm.
And yeah, he actually told me that like I was one of the few people who could solve those. And that there are actually a few different questions that he said were like really rare for people to be able to understand and like solve, and I got them all.
Hmm. And so he like just I think what he said was, well, you clearly know what you're doing, and then he just kind of cut off the technical interview, and you guys just kind of for the rest of the interview, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we kind of just started like chatting about like life and like sports and just a bunch of kind of like uh random stuff because he said like, yeah, you clearly know what you're doing, so we can just end the technical interview.
Yeah, and it's like at that point, I mean, you haven't even left the interview yet, but you pretty much have the offer in the bag. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
it's just so obvious, and so I mean, that's freaking amazing that you were able to do that. So major props for that. And then the last part was like you said, the networking piece. So how many people would you say you kind of ended up networking with ultimately, like since joining the program? Because I know, when you first started, it was like 20 to or whatever, 10 to 15, right?
Right. Yeah. Thinking about it, I have like my list, and now I kind of realize like I've just like informally been able to network with people like in my life, and so it's probably bigger than my list. So I'd say around 300 people. Um, I come from a pretty like tight knit school, I would say. So I think my success rate was high, and then I think I really like kind of was able to like master like pitching myself, and just being able to have like a nice chat with people and being able to have a nice call. And so yeah, 300. But it really worked out because now I have a referral at like almost every like major bank or elite boutique.
Right. Right, and that's really the key there is that obviously, you go to an Ivy League school and you have a pretty good GPA, but there are a lot of other students who go to Ivy League schools and have the same GPA as you and arguably probably had more finance experience than you because you're a bioengineering major, right? And so
Right.
the fact that you got every single interview wasn't purely based on just how you were on paper. I don't think, at least, right? Really, the reason why you got every single interview is because of what you just said, which is you networked effectively and you networked efficiently. Because there's no way you could have networked with 300 people in that amount of time if you weren't doing it efficiently with kind of the systems and tools and processes that we kind of gave you, right? But that
Definitely.
but then you more importantly you had the networking skills to convert those networking opportunities into actual referrals, right? Like I always tell everyone's like, hey, the goal is to for every single bank that you're applying to, you want to have at least one or two people there who are really really strong connections that will be willing to refer you for an interview, and that's the only way to guarantee that you're going to get an interview amongst all these super qualified candidates, and that's pretty much exactly what you did, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So
Thank you.
that's awesome. So I guess we already mentioned earlier, we already kind of spoiled the results, but obviously now you have multiple offers, right? Elite Boutiques, Bulge Brackets, Barella, Citi, Evercore, Goldman Sachs coming up. You got invited to the Insight Day. They reached out to you, told you were a priority candidate, talked to you for an hour. So phenomenal outcome, right? Phenomenal conversion rate from applications to interviews. Phenomenal conversion rate from interview to offers. Well, really like 100% conversion. But like, I think maybe this is a silly question, but like, how do you feel about the investment you've made in the program at this point?
Oh, well, it's actually funny because I'm thinking about something that we talked about in our strategy call, and actually something that probably pushed me over the edge. It's just like if you think about like the ROI that you could get on like the stock market or like I don't know, like even like investing in your education, like I think it's actually nowhere near like the ROI for this program.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, like, who knows if I would have gotten an investment banking offer at all, if I had stuck with my traditional means. Maybe I would have been able to, piece together little bits and parts of behavioral and technical to kind of get a low tier bank. But the difference between, like, say, a low tier bank and now what I guess I'm deciding between, which is like an Evercore or Goldman or places like that, like the difference in those is huge, and the difference in the exit ops that you could get from those is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I mean, the ROI is like, somewhere crazy,
Yep.
and yeah, like way greater than what you're gonna take if you take that same money and like buy some like index funds or some like stupid cryptocurrency coin or whatever.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, I think you make a good point, which is if we think about how much money people are already investing in their college education these days, a lot of times, especially you go into a school like an Ivy League school, you're spending well into the six figures over 4 years, right? It
Exactly.
could be over $200,000 a lot of the times when you talk about like everything is said and done. And the whole point of for your parents to invest over $200,000, or in some cases, if you even worse, you have to take out student loans to do that. The whole point of doing that is to get the best job you could possibly get, right? That is an investment in and of itself, right? And so now
Definitely.
it's like, this is no different. You're making a very, very small incremental investment relative to what you're already investing in college, except what we're doing is what massively increasing the ROI on your education, right? Like if going back to what I said earlier, if the average college grad is making $50,000 when they graduate, but you're graduating into a job that's starting salary is $150,000, that's 3x, right?
Definitely.
And then it only goes up from there, right? But if your starting point is 3x, everybody understands how the law of compounding works. Even if both you and the other person who's making $50,000 only increases your compensation at, let's just say, I don't know, 3 to 5% a year into whatever the next 30 or 40 years that you'd be working, that's millions of dollars over the lifetime of your career, right? But we also know that, hey, starting in something like banking versus starting in like a regular $50,000 job, your compensation is not going to grow at the same rate. It's not realistic to even say you're both going to grow at 3 to 5%. Like it's for someone like you who's going to an Evercore or Goldman Sachs and then probably eventually to a mega fund on the buy side afterwards or whatever, KKR, Blackstone, TPG, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Your compensation is growing exponentially, right? Um,
Certainly.
you're by your 30 out of school, you could be making $300,000 if you end up at the right fund. So
Yeah, definitely. And
the ROI is massive. I mean, you're gonna get your ROI is already massive. Even we're talking about full-time opportunities at this point. Even just from getting your summer internship, you've already made your money back many, many times over, right?
definitely.
Um, are you comfortable talking about how much Evercore is going to pay you, or if you take the offer?
I
Or
actually I actually can't disclose the exact amount. It'd be confidential, but it's a lot.
yeah, it's above street, right? Let's
Oh yeah, way
be
above.
big about it. It's above street, and also like in addition to just the pay itself being above street, I didn't even know they did this, but I think it's probably only because they really, really want you, given how good of a candidate you are. But they're also offering a scholarship on top of that, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's freaking. I mean, look again. You just majorly crushed it. Like, I'm super happy for you, and just
Thank
want to
you.
congratulate you again on all the success. And I guess the last thing I'll ask you is, do you have any last minute tips or advice for the people who are still currently going through the recruiting process? Like, what can they do to, you know, I don't want to say get the same outcome as you, because I think for a lot of people that's like, again, you are like almost an outlier. Like it's crazy what you've been able to accomplish. But what can they do to even just maybe get a similar outcome as you, or like even if it's slightly worse, it's still a phenomenal outcome. Like what can they do? Like what should they be doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think really looking at the process as like a formula or a funnel. All these people who told me, oh, it's random, and I don't know how my buddy, you know, got rejected. He's in like 4 investment clubs. He's so legit. Well, really, it doesn't. I mean, investment clubs help on your resume or whatever, but if life was a game of just being in more investment clubs or whatever, right? Well, it'd be pretty easy to get an offer. And so, like, it's much more of like a formula, much more of a funnel than people realize. And being able to fine tune every single aspect, like, is the way to go. But I think on your own, there's just no way that's going to happen, right? Again, like, if everybody thinks that their behaviorals are top notch, well, then why are 99% of people getting rejected? And
Right.
that's because everybody's behaviorals are not top notch. And in fact, a lot of people's behaviorals suck.
Right.
You just be plain. I've like interviewed friends, and I'm just like, after going through this program, I'm like, how would you even say that? And so, I think, yeah, just being able to fine tune and, not being able to take that leap. Because again, ROI is so big that if you think about it, if you are going to, an Ivy League school, or if you're going to any sort of expensive school, or really anything in general, like this is going to be, a sliver of money compared to what you're going to spend on yourself in the grand scheme of things. Who knows? This might equate to like all the designer clothes you buy in a year or whatever, or some stupid stuff that's not actually going to like contribute to your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually like make more money for you.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, just like not being able to like be afraid to like have a coach, like have a real mentor who like can walk you through the process step by step. And then third of all, it's this program's a great way to like get you the tools that you need, get you the resources that you need. But at the end of the day, you have to like work hard. I mean, it's not just gonna fall in your lap. Winter of my sophomore year and kind of the second semester, like this is basically what I did. Like I tried to take easier classes and just chip away like really hard at recruiting, um, which of course required a lot of personal effort, but I think was made 10x easier just by having all your resources, all your tools, and your advice.
Yep. Yep. Got it. Okay. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, I think you make a great point, which is the analogy that I'll make is, you use that funnel example, and, you got to optimize that entire funnel, from get your application materials to your networking to getting the interview to acing the interview. Um, you can't diagnose your own funnel, right? It's kind of like, hey, if you're feeling sick, if something's wrong with your body, you're not going to diagnose it yourself. You're going to go see a doctor, right? You're going to go see someone who
Right.
knows how to fix these things. And recruiting is no different, right? And I would argue it's much more important and longer, has a more everlasting impact than some cold that you get. And you might even go see a doctor if you get a cold, but it's like for something like a career, why would you try to fix that yourself, right? So um, look, like, there you have it, guys. Like, I think the biggest takeaway you can kind of have from this conversation is that, hey, if you're already a smart and qualified candidate, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are, maybe you go to a great school, maybe you go to a non-charter school. It doesn't really matter. You maybe even have a great GPA, but maybe you don't have a whole lot of experience. Whatever the case may be, right? Um, we can help you get some amazingly phenomenal outcomes. Right? I mean, the bottom line is whatever outcome you think you may be able to get for yourself. Let's put it this way: whatever outcome that is, we could probably get you something that's 10 times better, right? Than if you were to just do it on your own. So why settle? Why settle for, good enough, or maybe not good enough? Maybe you can't even get an offer on your own, but why settle? Like, for something as important as your career, for something that you've been working so hard towards all your life, right? Like the whole point of you going to school and getting good grades and getting a good college, like everything you've done up to this point has been working towards this one end goal of having a great career. So why not get all the help you can get at this point, and take your best shot at it, right? And so you likely have, all of you have a lot of potential inside of you, right? That's just waiting to be tapped. But sometimes it's difficult to bring that out on your own, right? Just like Bradley tried to do it by himself originally, but I mean, he clearly has a ton of potential. Like, look at where he is now, right? But he wasn't able to bring that out on his own. But, if you can get the help you need, you have an expert help you take what you've already got and just refine it and bring it out and present it the right way, you can completely obliterate your competition, right? And you can get the best offers out there, right? Like the Evercore's and the Goldman Sachs of the world, right? And sometimes you're going to be scared of making a bet on you're going to be scared of just making a bet on yourself, right? But if you invest in yourself, the rewards can be tremendous, right? If you won't invest in yourself, then nobody else will invest in you either, right? And then what ends up happening is you just stay on the path that you're currently on, which is most likely not living up to your fullest potential, right? So if you're in a similar boat as where Bradley was 7 months ago, and you're ready to make a big change and just completely transform yourself as a candidate, then I want you to go and schedule a strategy session with me right now. Okay, so you can do so by going to my website, or actually go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Okay. The street in that URL is abbreviated to ST. So it's really wallstmastermind.com/apply. And on this strategy session, basically, we'll discuss where you're currently at, what you're struggling with, where are you trying to go. And I will give you my honest assessment of whether that's possible and what it's going to take to get there, right? And sometimes, believe it or not, I tell a lot of people, if it's not possible, like, and then it's not in your best interest to pursue this, I will tell you that as well, right? Because it's not always, investment banking is not always the right thing for everybody. So, but we don't know that until we've actually assessed your situation. So that's what I'm going to help you with, right? So no matter what, I'm going to give you advice on kind of the next best steps for you to achieve your goals. Okay, so the strategy session is free. There are no obligations, so make sure you go and book one. And before you hop, obviously, Bradley, again, I just want to thank you for coming on here today and kind of sharing your experiences with everyone on here. You are an absolute rock star. You've got an amazing outcome. I would say, good luck on the Goldman Sachs interview that's coming up. I don't think you really need it. So,
Thank you.
But yeah, man, like, so glad that I, was able to work with you and help you on this process. And I'm excited to see all the big things you do going forward.
Definitely, yeah. I'm excited to finally put like ink to page and scan that offer letter in and finally just be done with it, and like feel secure. Like, just know that like you've done it and you're gonna work at one of these places. It's gonna be great.
Absolutely, man. Well, congrats again. Thanks for coming on. And for the rest of you guys that are listening, thanks for listening today. And I hope to talk to you guys soon. All right. All right, Bradley. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.